Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the U.S. Black Chambers, thank you for joining us today. My name is Elisa Joseph, Director of Programs for USBC, and this webinar, again, is part of our series sponsored by Wells Fargo. For the past few weeks, we've talked about the CARES Act financing programs, how to apply, program differences, available lenders. Today, let's discuss how you keep your business safe, particularly since many of us are working virtually. USBC is happy to have two presenters today who specialize in cybersecurity and business continuity practices. We are especially proud because they are also members of our President's Council. Please join me in welcoming Eric Kelly, Chairman and CEO, Overland Tandberg, and returning as promised, Antwayne Ford, President and CEO, Enlightened, Inc. Our conversation today will focus on ways to keep your firm safe, whether online or at your business office, and how to plan for the least amount of disruption when dealing with data breaches. As always, if you have questions, please submit them to us using the form at usblackchambers.org/cares-act/. You can also register for our upcoming webinars and send your questions on those topics in advance. So let me start by sharing some background information on our speakers today. Eric Kelly is Chairman and Chief Executive of Overland Tandberg, a global storage and technology company. Mr. Kelly has over 35 years of experience in developing accelerated growth strategies, improving profitability of complex global businesses, organizational transformations, technology and business innovation, corporate financing, mergers and acquisitions, and cybersecurity. In addition, he has over 15 years of board experience, which includes public companies trading on the US and Canadian stock exchanges, private companies, universities, and foundations. Prior to his current position as Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Overland Tandberg, Mr. Kelly served as Chairman and CEO of Sphere 3D, a publicly traded virtualization software company. He is also the former U.S. advisor to Nomura Securities Venture Group, a leading global investment bank with over $360 billion in assets. President Barack Obama appointed Mr. Kelly for an 8-year term to the Executive Office of the President of the United States Council of Advisors on Science, Technology, and Advanced Manufacturing Partnership Steering Committee. Mr. Kelly is also a member of Sigma Pi Phi fraternity and has been extremely active as National Chair of the Technology Advisory Committee, a valued advisor to the organization's previous 4 national presidents. He has also served as president of his local chapter. He earned a BS degree in business management from San Jose State University, an MBA from San Francisco State University, and an executive MBA from Harvard University. Mr. Kelly is currently the chairman of the board of San Jose State University Tower Foundation. Welcome, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Antwayne Ford. Antwayne Ford is President and Chief Executive Officer of Enlightened, Inc., a leading information technology and management consulting firm founded in 1999. Enlightened serves federal, state, and local government agencies and provides cybersecurity, software development and integration, service offerings to support management consulting and business process outsourcing services. In 2016, the company expanded its service offerings to support the transportation and healthcare sectors. A co-founder of Enlightened, Antwayne has led the company's growth from a startup business to a diverse organization with over 200 employees. Prior to Enlightened, Antwayne served as Director of Application Support for Intelsat, leading the business unit's development of applications, consulting projects, and document management infrastructure. Mr. Ford serves as the Vice Chair and Regional Director of the East Coast region of the U.S. Black Chambers, Inc. He is Board Chair of the District of Columbia Workforce Investment Council, appointed by Mayor Muriel Bowser. Since 2019, Antwayne serves as a founder and the president of the Greater Washington Black Chamber of Commerce, the leading voice of Black businesses in the Greater Washington area. He is committed to promoting Black business growth by providing resources through advocacy, education, and the facilitation of networking opportunities. An advocate for community investment, youth mentorship, and corporate philanthropy, Antwayne's personal philosophy is, to whom much is given, much is required. He spends much of his personal time mentoring youth and overseeing the management of a robust and award-winning internship program at Enlightened. He also serves on the advisory board of Howard University School of Business Information Systems. A native Washingtonian, he earned his bachelor and master's degree from George Washington University with honors. And in 2019, he earned his Master of Divinity summa cum laude from the Lancaster Bible College. Welcome, Antwayne.
Hello, how are you?
Great. So I'm just really grateful to have both of you gentlemen join us today to share your company's expertise and have that help Black businesses every day with solutions that address cybersecurity threats and help firms incorporate plans that keep their businesses operating at all times. So I'd like to start with our first question. I want to direct that to you, Eric. What are the best practices to protect data?
Lisa, first of all, it's a pleasure joining you and Antwayne. And I just want to say, hopefully everybody is still safe and well out there as they're dealing with COVID-19. But to answer your question, when you look at companies and today, whether they're small or large, from a best practices standpoint, is really three rules. The first one is, one, you have to back up your data. And two, you have to have a second copy that really addresses business continuity, which means you're able to be up and running quickly if something happens to your laptop or your desktop or your server. And then the third is have a backup copy. So really 3 copies of your data is kind of the best practices to make sure you protect your digital assets and protect your company.
That's really great information, because I will tell you, I probably only back up once. I think I'm sort of forced to back up with Google. I feel like I have it in 5 different places there, but I only have one small little hard drive. So I think it's important for businesses to really know what it means to really protect your data in the long run. Antwayne, we face an increased need with remote workers to transport and protect their data while working from home. And in the next slide that comes up, I would like for both you and Eric to really respond to this. What do you think is the first thing companies should do to help remote workers improve efficiencies and protect their data? And again, now we have people who are out, at home across the country working for companies. The next slide, I think, will show us some of your thoughts, particularly Eric, your thoughts in this space about what happens with small businesses. So if you both could address the question, that would be wonderful. I'll start with you, Antwayne.
So, and like Eric said, I really pray that everyone's going to be safe and you guys are practicing social distancing and taking a break from the news to go somewhere else and smile. We faced this right after the pandemic hit. We had to make a decision like everyone else in terms of do we continue to work from the office or do we continue till we send people home? And we faced this not only with our remote staff in Washington, D.C., we faced it with staff in New York and New Jersey and San Antonio. And so we had a very complex nature because some folks we controlled directly, our staff, and some folks worked on the government site. And so we had to come up with standards, first and foremost, on what it took to work from home. And we had to all of a sudden provide equipment that wasn't part of our budget because we couldn't allow people to work and have what we consider to be proprietary data and or information that belongs to our customers on their home machines. And so we had to do things like ensure that their network was connected and secure to our network. We had to make sure that we had to provide equipment to them that met the standards that we had to adhere to. We had to make sure they understood new guidelines about what they could show other people, what they could print and copy, because all of a sudden this critical information was out of a control set and working from home. And so Eric has some incredible facts here where, you know, if you don't take care of these things appropriately and you don't recover, Eric, these facts are amazing. You want to speak to these?
Yeah. I mean, Antwayne, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that, you know, when you're looking at small businesses and you're trying to get contracts awarded and you're trying to figure out how to make sure, you know, your customers that you have today still feel comfortable that you're protecting their information, as Antwayne said, there's practices that you have to put in place. But the alarming thing, when you look at this data, I mean, 98% of small businesses that are hacked never recover. And that's an amazing thing. So when you think about, you insure your car, you insure your home, your house, whatever, you have to make sure you insure your data. And you look at 60% of all small businesses, you know, that lose their data go out of business within the next 6 months. And you link that to the data that's coming out today, most small businesses have working capital of less than 30 days. So if you think about this, you lose your data, whether, you know, it's through a virus, whether you dropped it off the kitchen table, you need to make sure you're up and running immediately, because you only have a month or less of working capital. So it's just so critical, you know, for small businesses to really understand that, as Alicia said, you know, backing up your data, having 2 copies, maybe you don't have 3, but you have 2 copies. And we'll talk briefly later about the difference between business continuity and backup in the cloud. And those are 2 distinct business situations that you must be aware of to protect your company.
Thank you both for that. I know that, and Eric, I think you had a great example as we talked a little bit earlier, a personal example. I think sometimes people don't really realize what it means to be back up and running. You know, there have been times where, for instance, people's sites have gone down, whether it be due to hacking, whether it be due to, right now we're all on the internet. I don't think any of the companies, IP companies ever thought that we would be, everyone would be home at the same time, right? And
Yep.
so, I mean, we've had issues where things have slowed down as we've tried to either deliver webinars or, you know, share information in meetings. And how quickly should somebody be able to be back online if they do have some sort of interruption? What should that really look like?
You should be back up and running. Thanks, Alicia. You should be back and up and running within an hour or less. And when you think about the solutions today, as Alicia mentioned, you back things up to the cloud. You know, they were never prepared to have 80% of the workforce working from home. So you have your Wi-Fi, you have your internet connection, and if you're trying to, you know, you can upload the data to the cloud a lot faster than you can download it back. So you need to have a copy sitting next to you so you can be up and running, because there's numbers out there where a small business, if they're down for a day, they're losing tens of thousands of dollars a day. You can't see your clients, you can't service your products, you can't issue purchase orders, you can't do anything. And so those hours are critical to the lifeline of the company. Alicia, there's a statistic out there. Everyone can Google this. If you have your information in Apple iClouds, they specifically tell you if you have, let's say, 500 gigs of data, which is not a lot today on your laptop, it may take you 20 to 30 days to get that back. Okay, you can't just think how much money you've lost in 20 to 30 days. That's a going out of business strategy versus having a copy sitting there next to you that's protected, password protected, you know, that has encryption, so that you don't have to worry about, can I get my data back? How long is it going to take? So that's kind of what I say, you know, when you ask the first question in terms of best practices. You already have it on your laptop, have another copy sitting there next to you, and then have it protected in the cloud. And that's what large companies do. And, you know, Antwayne and I are trying to make sure that all of us are using those best practices as well.
Yeah, that is definitely great advice, because I don't think, again, none of us thought we'd be home this long. So, you know, I think that is really great counsel, and for folks to really begin to be thinking about that. As you were just saying, as we were just saying, many businesses have had to move to digital or e-commerce platforms. since stay in place and social distancing have become the norm. They may have had to get a website up really quickly as part of it. So I'd love for you, both of you, to respond around these 2 points I'd like to ask, and generally what you encounter with your clients. The first point is, what should they be thinking about when they're thinking about securing data? What constitutes the data that they really should be securing?
So I'm gonna start something that's gonna be non-technical, but is interesting. So it's gonna be my closing point. Many people don't think about this because all of a sudden I got to pay money and something hasn't happened yet. Mm-hmm. And that becomes why we don't do this, right? We don't back up. We don't practice cybersecurity because, like, wait a minute, that's going to cost me money beforehand. So what am I thinking about by securing the data? Well, why am I securing the data? It hasn't happened yet. And so what happens is people don't think about this equation. What's the impact of the loss of my data versus the amount of money I'm going to pay to secure it? And if they ever ask themselves that equation, it's not even close. We see the statistics. 98% of small businesses go out of business. So is it worth you not thinking about protecting your information? That's always the first question I ask when I'm talking to my client. And they're like, well, Antwayne, this cyber thing, I'm okay. I'm like, wait a minute. You're 98%. So if I told you 98%, if you walk in that room, you're going to die. Would you walk in that room? Nobody would walk in that room.
Right.
But Eric, why aren't they thinking about this? I think they think about, you know, do I absolutely have to have it because of the cost factors here? And I think they have to answer that question.
Well, I mean, Antwayne, you're absolutely right. I mean, we had conversations earlier about, you know, that special, you know, just those issues. You know, you have it in the cloud. Mm-hmm. And one of the things is, you know, data, you know, your digital assets are your lifeline to the business, not just to get up and running, but as we talked earlier, it's also about your intellectual property. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's your idea. Okay, it's your thoughts. It's your strategy on how to go win a customer. And I don't think you would want to leave your front door open and have someone be able to get access to your ideas. I mean, that's your business. That's why you're doing this, because you have something unique, whether it's a marketing idea, whether it's a product you're developing, whether it's a service. And so you don't want to have someone get that information, and now you're competing against yourself because they have your ideas. So it's all the things that you can think about in terms of your digital assets. Why it's so important. I mean, Antwayne already said it. I mean, Alicia said it as well. If you have it in your, you know, you built a website. Okay, they spend time trying to figure out how to crack into your website, yes. Take control of your website. And the next thing you know, it's not your picture on the website, it's someone else's picture on the website. Right. And so, and you've heard these horror stories and you always think it's not going to happen to you, but you know, they're out there. And so, you know, we're trying to make sure, you know, we share with you, you know, best practices from Antwayne and, you know, best practices from us in terms of, you know, how do we make sure you don't have that issue happen to you.
As we move to the next slide, I want to just pick up on what you were talking about, Eric, relative to new ideas and IP. If you just had to really sort of think about, you know, 2 or 3 points that people would have to do, and we all, you know, I'm a smaller business, you know, my needs aren't probably huge as a large business would be, but I might not be thinking about this in the right way. If I just had to write down a couple of points, what would those points, as we talk about just protecting ideas in particular, and any other IP, would you recommend right now?
Yeah, I mean, I look at, you know, your IP, your ideas, just as important as your bank account, right? So if you don't want anybody to crack into your bank account, you don't want somebody to crack into your intellectual property. So when I think about this, I look at digital assets as more valuable than gold today. And so it goes across financial services, your intellectual property, your thoughts. You want to make sure, one, whatever you're doing has a multi-layers of password protection. So that way, no one can get into your information. It's like having a double lock on your door. You don't just have one lock, you have multiple locks and a chain perhaps on your door. So you want to have multiple layers of password protection. The second thing, and it's like a broken record, is have copies of your data. So don't just have a copy of your data in your office. Have a copy of your data at home. Have your copy of your data offline, because if you have your copy of your data offline, they can never hack into it. If it's online, I don't care if it's in Microsoft Azure or Amazon, if it's online, they have the opportunity to get access to your data. So you want to have an online copy. So when you look at your laptop and you go onto your Wi-Fi, that is online. They can get a virus in there, ransomware comes in, and they take over and it says, you need to pay me $1,000 to get your data back. Well, if you have an offline copy, you don't have to pay the $1,000. You can reformat your drive, delete the information, put your information back on. Even in the cloud, okay, that is online. Okay, so I think people believe that they're protected because it's sitting someplace else. That's only another location with a server. It's not in the air, it's not in the cloud, it is another location. And what Antwayne does a lot of his time spending is the cybersecurity piece. The problem is you call Antwayne when you already got sick. Okay. You should call him before you get sick to make sure you're protected.
Yeah.
So I don't know, hopefully that helps, Alicia.
No, it definitely does. And Antwayne, I'm loving the anecdotes that you both are sharing, because they make so much sense. And so I want to give you an opportunity to talk about it from your perspective. One thing I think about, I'm a former banker, and before we really put a lot of data on our laptops, we had files, right? And every once in a while, we would take the files that we were working on and we'd send them, put them in a box, and they'd be archived and they'd go to Iron Mountain. Now, everybody can't afford Iron Mountain, right? But if we think of it in that same vein, it really went to an off-site property whose specialty was to take care of those records, right? And if we needed something so that we didn't have the same clutter at our desk, we could just request it and have that file come in. Talk a little bit about, this perspective from what you do, and how that can help companies.
So, I mean, and Eric had a point that, and I can tell he and I have been partners for a little bit. I said, sometimes you just put it in the container and make sure no one has exposure to that container.
Right.
It's just real simple, because at the end of the day, if no one has access to that container, they can't get in. But very similarly, and we see this within the intelligence community, they do this a lot within some of our defense sectors. They only give information to people on a need-to-know basis. And so that's critical, because sometimes in our world, in our network, we expose our information to too many people, even within our network, because all of a sudden, only these, if you look at your intellectual property, if you look at your data, only these two people even need to see it. And so the other people don't even need to know it exists. And so you need to be able to lock that down such that only those two people have access to, maybe, as Eric just mentioned, that offsite container that is a closed network. It's not no one has access outside to the internet, but maybe those people within your network have access to it. It's almost like in that Iron Mountain facility, there are only people that are in there that can see it. And I think we need to start, particularly our businesses and Black-owned businesses and our small businesses, where, to be honest with you, from a cybersecurity attack perspective, those countries target small businesses, because small businesses still have access to big banks. You mentioned your bank, right? So if I can get into your small business, I can get into that bank account. If I can get into that bank account, I can snake my way around. And so the reason why this is so important to our Black businesses out here, because you are a high value target as compared to even government agencies, because they got big walls around them. But Eric, some of our companies don't have the walls around them.
That's true. That's very true. So I want to, I have a slide up. Eric, thank you for this slide where we talk about backup versus business continuity. My next question is really, I think, going to some of this. We've talked a little bit about remote networks. We've talked a little bit about avoiding data breaches. But I'm at home now. Even when everybody else was at an office, I was still at home doing work, right? And right now, not only is my internet slow certain times of the day, But when I try to access stuff, even from my cloud, it takes forever sometimes for me to get my files downloaded. So I'm losing productivity on that end. If I'm just buffering, sometimes I feel like I'm buffering forever. It sort of takes time away from me to really pull up what I might need for a client in that moment. So how do I get more working efficiency around this? And how does that address this issue of backup versus business continuity in my business?
Sure. You want me to take that one first? Or
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Eric.
Well, so this is a great conversation. And Alicia, I didn't know you were going to bring up Iron Mountain, so I'll kind of weave that into
Okay, good.
But so business continuity is the ability for you to, as Alicia said, have the best performance and the best protection of your information. So if you have those files stored next to you, to Alicia on her laptop, she doesn't have to go to a cloud solution and worry about pulling it down or have the buffering. So just from that perspective, from a user and productivity, it's critical to have that. The second thing I'll just continue to bring home is the business continuity piece. So let's say that not only do you have a slow connection, but you actually lose your connection for an hour or a day. Well, you want to have that information sitting there next to you, Alicia, so that you actually can continue to operate. And then the backup piece, you can back that up at night. You can back it up when the connections are a little bit better. And so that's really the distinction. Business continuity is to make sure that you're up and running. As the slide says, we are open for business. You want to make sure you're always open for business. And then you want to be able to back this up, okay, at an offline or at midnight. You can schedule it to back it up every night going to whatever cloud provider you use. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing, you mentioned you're a banker. And so I did a webinar about 2 weeks ago with JP Morgan Chase. Mm-hmm. And their biggest issue are the same issues that Black businesses have, because now everybody is working at home. They're saying, how do we make sure, one, if they print information, they can't throw it in the trash. They have your bank account information, they have all your personal stuff. So they're trying to figure out, can't print it, can't throw it in the trash. How do they back it up? They know they have 80+% of their workforce now working from home. Hundreds of thousands of people, I think 200,000 to be exact. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the other thing is what you call Iron Mountain. So what Iron Mountain is kind of, we called it the vault, okay, or the landmine, or whatever it is. And what that means is there's a copy of your information that is not sitting on premise. Okay, so or you have it in the vault, or you have it someplace where if something happens to your laptop, somebody breaks in, they do something nefarious, you have a copy stored someplace that you can actually get it and be up and running. Now, the interesting thing, and what Antwayne and I have worked on, and we'll talk about a little later, the solution that we have is the same solution that the big banks are using. They're backing up the information, taking what we're going to provide you, and they're sending it to Iron Mountain today. Okay, so our objective is to make sure Black businesses, for the first time, are in front of the curve, and providing the services and technology to make sure you get there.
That's great. Antwayne, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's interesting, and I'll use an example for, because a lot of my staff said they couldn't move fast enough because they're on these home networks. And so what we did, Eric, was, and at least I'm going to send, you're good now, I was going to send one to you, was that we basically got a few of them, the little MiFis, MiFis. It's because we basically said, I can't rely on your home network because you're sharing it with too many people.
Right.
So let me give you this little device that we bought it for my critical folks. So effectively, I gave them a backup little internet. They could dedicate themselves, because we were doing, particularly for the first month or so, I mean, we were doing all type of things. We needed real-time information. And I'm watching people like this is the 1920 and old movies. And I'm like, guys, we got to get faster than this. And so that for me was a solution, because if we look at the Internet of Things and everything being connected, when everything's connected, that means there's polling all the time on your network. And that means also, unfortunately, that's access all the time to your network. And so if we look at this, I may have my music device, my refrigerator, my locked doors. All these are open ports, doors to your network. And here's the key. talking about business continuity. If I'm connected to my network here, that means that I'm connected to my network in my office. That means that via my little device over here, that means they can snake their way to my network. And so that's how serious this business continuity thing is from that perspective. And so that way that I have a 12-year-old, this allows me and my little MiFi to make sure when he's streaming Netflix or Hulu, I can still work because home.
Yeah, trust and believe. I feel that every day. So I want to go bring up our next slide where we really are talking about being at home and working from home. So if we can bring up that slide, that has a huge focus on it. One of the things that I think is always important, my discipline, as being in the financial services industry is I work a lot with checklists to sort of make sure that I'm completing the tasks that I need to, particularly when you're working with customers and you're working with enterprise level clients. So is there a checklist that businesses should always be reviewing that ensures that they have the right protections in place when they're looking to secure their data? What do you all think about that? And we could bring up, Kevin, you could bring up the next slide, that'd be great.
Eric, you want to go first?
Sure. There definitely is a checklist, and I know that everyone can't see the next slide, but when you think about this from a checklist perspective, you have to make sure you have this distinction between what we call intelligent business continuity and backup and disaster recovery. And so one of the checklists is how quickly can you get up and running? Okay, it should be an hour or less. Okay, do you have an offline copy of your data? And what that means is it's not on the network, it's not on the special device that Antwayne has provided all of us to make sure we don't have a cyber attack, but it's actually offline and offline. And then the third thing on the checklist is make sure you have an off-site copy. So totally different between offline and off-site. So offline, it could be sitting next to Alicia, it could be next to me, next to Antwayne. Off-site is in a vault someplace, whether, as Alicia said, Iron Mountain or in your cloud. And so that's really what you want to do from a checklist. And then the final thing, as Antwayne brought that up, is what level of protection do you have? And what I mean by that, if someone does happen to get your device by accident or on purpose, that they can't get access to your data. You have to have multiple layers of password protection. And other people talk about encryption. Okay, but you want to make sure that if you lose that, you're not sitting there sweating, going, oh my God, they have access to my data. What am I going to do? You know that it's protected and it has multiple layers of password protection. So to me, Alicia, that's kind of the checklist that I always talk to our customers about in terms of making sure they have those particular things. And then Antwayne, I'm sure you'll add to that, but that's the checklist.
So Alicia, here's the thing that really drives me bananas at times. People working from home and every now and then they get tired, so they then go to the park and they're going, and all of a sudden they're working from a public network.
Right.
So whatever security you had,
it's gone.
It's gone. I'm like, you mean to tell me you're working from a public network?
Yeah.
So immediately, unless you have these devices and you have these backups, you might as well pull them out now because you're going to use them fairly soon. Because literally, there are people that sit in front of coffee shops and McDonald's and even in front of your home right now, trying to break into your network and looking for networks that aren't secure. I mean, literally, they do that all the time. So that's critical to make sure your network is secure and you only work from secure networks. Secondly, Eric mentioned about multiple layers of security, but one problem that we see when we go in and do an assessment where people call us before they get sick is that they have an old user, a person that left their company a long time ago that still has access to the network because they didn't take time to do due diligence when that person left and that person's access is still available. So in other words, that person can still give somebody else the password if they want because people don't do proper cleaning up. And so a lot of times we can be real technical if we want, or we can say, wait a minute. That means that person still has all the domain access that you had before. And so basic things like don't access a public network unless you want to do, watch Netflix or Hulu or something like that. Make sure you're practicing multiple redundant password protections and strong passwords. Make sure that you are practicing encryption and remove old accounts. I mean, that's a checklist that I would really look at.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to have the next slide, bring up the next slide, but I want to ask just this is a little off topic from what we've talked about, but I probably get notices to purchase or services for VPNs every day. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, obviously, as a smaller business or home-based business, maybe it makes sense, but are there risks in doing that? And I always get a little nervous when I see something, a trend of something coming up all the time. So what would your thoughts be about VPN services?
Lisa, if I could, I wanted to add a comment to what Antwayne said.
Sure.
Sure. Because I think this may bring it home. And I have to tell everybody, I'm guilty of doing this as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, how often are you online, sitting in your home office and you get up and go have lunch and leave your laptop connected onto the Wi-Fi?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or you go and take a break. You're vulnerable. You left your laptop sitting there. And I do it all the time because I get hungry, I go to the kitchen, okay,
Right.
I get on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what Antwayne's talking about. You're connected. And so you have to have a protected copy. And that's so important, and so that's, I just want to make sure it kind of and that's happening more and more because we're at home, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
not in your office where you have a protected environment of a virtual VPN. You're now on the public side of the world, and we act like we're not. And I do the same thing. So I'm guilty. So, I'm not preaching to myself as well as to you guys. It's therapy.
Well, that's why we had this conversation. I think that's such an important point. I mean, I do the same thing as well. It's just, a natural thing to feel you're comfortable because you're at home. I'm just running to the kitchen for a minute. Then, in the meantime, I get a phone call from a client. Now an hour has gone by.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you've been exposed all that time. So I think that's a great point. We have our slide up that talks about, I love how it's titled Homework. That really talks about this. And this question is really around this idea of scams and fraudulent activities. And that was why I brought up the issue around VPN networks as well. I was reading something recently where the FBI and the Department of Justice have been on their websites right now. They've included information on how to avoid scams that come up on their sites, as well as helping to provide links to people to protect their sites. Are there other places, and I think about both of your companies in particular, where people can receive information either about, what are some of the latest scams that might be going on, or where to find information about potential scams that might hit them? Originally we were getting a lot of them kind of, through our mobile phones, or even, if you've got a home-based phone. But now, because our means of communication is really online, it's gotten to be a lot more serious. What are your thoughts on that?
Antwayne, I'll let you take that one. I'll follow your lead.
Okay. So, and it's interesting because one of the things we saw, Alyssa, interesting, is that the scammers were putting out scam artists information for you to come to them. So they would put out false doctrine, if you will, to say, hey, watch out for these, come to us to be able to secure things, right? And what we don't do is due diligence to check out the organization. And I tell someone at the end of the day, if I'm going to work with this particular company, I'm going to do research on them. I'm going to evaluate them. I'm going to contact them. I'm going to look at the Better Business Bureau. I'm going to check these organizations out. And so I think from that perspective, that's one resource you can use. How long has this organization been in business? Who are your customers? I'm not going to sign a contract with anyone that I haven't checked out. And so those things are really critical. One thing I will mention is interesting to this point of, and I mention this because there's a lot of lists out there that you got to validate, and you want to validate those two federal government agencies quite candidly. And then some organizations that specialize in this, like AFCEA and other business organizations. But one of the things out there that I'm telling our business owners out here is to also use what I consider to be common sense and behavioral patterns. What do I mean by that? So these are schemes that's coming out right now. Literally, I've had somebody go and somehow they learn the behavior of who I am by looking at sites, and they'll send an email to one of my employees and say, Mr. Ford said, go out and give them these particular gift cards, right? We've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
My new employees, that somehow they have access to new employees, will often call and say, okay, where do you want me to go? And so what happens is, and they use the new employees because the new employees don't know my behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I would never ask someone to go out and give gift cards. I would never ask someone to go out and give them access to a network or to be able to go to this website and get this information. But if you don't pay attention to behaviors of key individuals in your company, you will just do these things. And so it's interesting. And the reason I say this is that there's sources out there by the federal government, but the most important is to say, does this make sense? That someone wants me to click this icon or go to this network? And you got to ask yourself this question, because regardless of the source of information that you have, if you don't use this source, I think you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's so important because, and you have to, unfortunately, really be careful, because I think probably at least once a month now, somebody in my organization will get an email from me that's not actually from me, that says, Eric is working on a deal. It's really important and critical. Can you wire some money over to Antwayne? Or can you wire the money over to Alicia?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, now my finance team knows that I would never do that. But to Antwayne's point, as we bring on new people, they may say, oh my goodness, Eric sent this email. Let me go wire this. Let me go do this. So you really have to be careful. And by the way, they're really good because it looked just like my email.
Wow. Wow.
And, until you look into it closely, I said, yeah, that looks like it came from me, but unless I was sleepwalking or something, I don't remember doing that. But so they're really sophisticated. So
Eric, I do have a question there, because interesting enough, when that happened to me and I looked at the email, it was indeed my email where somehow they got into my cloud info. You talked about not making sure you have a backup. Somehow they had infiltrated where we kept our email addresses in the cloud. I won't say the provider because I don't want to get in trouble, but it was actually my email.
Yeah.
So the importance of, I think, the solution to be able to say, the cloud is extremely secure. Let me be out there, because we do a lot of recommendations. But at the end of the day, it's only as secure as it is today, because remember, the people that are trying to get into your devices are doing this full time, all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have nothing but time on their hands, right?
That's
So
all.
they're trying to break in more often than we're trying to prevent them.
Right.
That's right.
Right. You know what that brings up for me, and I don't think we ever really thought about it in this environment, but the importance of onboarding and offboarding, right? I think, Antwayne, you talked a little bit earlier about people who leave the company, and sometimes the critical pieces of information or user access that they have, because they're not offboarded properly, we forget to get those pieces. Usually the thing that gets remembered is if they had an ID badge or something, but those other pieces are usually forgotten. And I think it's the same thing with onboarding.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about what your real behavior is and how you would never as the owner of your company do X, Y, and Z. But for new employees, they may not know that. So one of the things that's always interesting to me when we talk about that issue in particular is how an owner is perceived in social media. I think all of us, right now we're sort of driven to leverage social media a lot more, not only to sort of tell the story of our companies, but to highlight and to network and to do a lot of other things. How do you secure yourself as a business owner to be able to project those kind of behaviors that you would be thinking about when you were onboarding or offboarding an employee? And how does that, and what should you stay away from so that you're not projecting the wrong thing? I know it's very easy to, to misconstrue both our private and our public selves in social media. What are you all seeing in this realm? How do you help business owners sort of understand the need of here's how I protect my brand and my company, and here's what I might do as part of my, my individual and personal life.
Well, it's really interesting that we're having that conversation with all of our employees, especially new employees, because today social media, personal and business, sometimes you can't separate it.
Mm-hmm.
As I tell everyone, just from a brand perspective, they says, well, I want to bring my whole self to work. And I tell them, your whole self on Saturdays and Sundays is not the whole self I want on Mondays through Fridays.
Yes.
Okay. So you have to really separate that. And I'm sure everybody out there knows what I'm talking about when they say, well, I can't bring my whole self to work. I said, it's a different, my whole self on Saturdays is probably not the whole self I bring on Mondays and through Fridays. Just from a brand perspective. And I'll pass it over to you, Antwayne. I have a few more thoughts, but I'll let you take it from there.
One of the things is we talk about our values, and one of our values is integrity. And so when we onboard folks, we sort of talk about our values, and we talked about why integrity is so important, meaning integrity of who you are as a person, integrity of your services, integrity of the company. Interestingly enough, when you face a cyber attack or lack of business continuity, you've lost your integrity to your customer because they trust you. That says, okay, I'm going to trust you to protect my information. And you got to call them and say, I went down, I got hacked. I don't have a backup. I don't have a backup next to me. I didn't call Overland, Cambridge, and Enlightened. And all of a sudden I'm done. Because you lack integrity, because you didn't anticipate an attack or business continuity. So your who you are should be pervasive through your services.
I think those are all great points, and I really wanted you to hammer that home, because many of us are vetting people on the phone now and virtually, right? And so we have to spend a little bit more time trying to understand that. And for a company like my little small company, there are times where I'm getting lots of promotional requests from people looking for business, but it also means that they've looked me up in some vein. And so I think it's important for folks to recognize that and to understand how you can protect yourself against that.
Like literally, we have a little pin that we have, and we give it to all new employees, and it says E4I. And Enlightened, and it's only for employees that have the 4 I's, and they represent intelligence, integrity, innovation, and intensity, which are effectively our value statement. But we try to make sure that we indoctrinate them throughout. And they say, we got to represent these 4 I's all the time. And so, Eric does the same thing with his folks out there, and make sure that, because in his levels, he's been publicly traded, and he has to actually represent the public and people's value in terms of their investment in his companies. And so that's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is because, to think both points, it's a 24/7 environment today, because they can look you up on social media, whether you're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We watch some of our folks that was on Twitter all the time. Companies are looking to work with you, partner with you. They have such easy access to figure out who you are, Monday through Sunday. And so, and you may not realize it, and you wonder why you didn't get that particular opportunity. It may be because of their social media.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So as we come to a close, this has been a wonderful conversation. I want to thank you both so much for all these pearls of wisdom that you've imparted to us. If we can bring up the next slide, can you share some of the resources that are available to help business owners? I'll start with you, Antwayne, first, and then finish, and then have you, Eric, comment afterwards.
Well, I think you want to make sure you take advantage of organizations that would assess your infrastructure, and I think it's due diligence. I think it doesn't make sense if you're going to go into business and not make sure that you can have a continuity within your organization. It's the same way you would go to the doctor. And if we look at COVID-19, the way it's attacking people, people, quite candidly, that have preconditions that they could have taken care of.
Mhm.
right? I mean, it's unfortunate and it affects everyone, but if you look at the death rate, particularly high among African Americans, is because there are diseases that they have that are preventable. I think some of the things that we have here are preventable through solutions of assessing somebody's infrastructure, looking at recommendations, and looking at, quite honestly, solutions such as what Eric's going to talk about today that will allow you to say, regardless of what happens, you're going to be able to come back up within an hour or so. And so this is important why Eric and I partner, because for me, I need what he has to make sure I can prevent solutions to people before they get sick, before their company goes under. We make sure that they can prevent a death sentence on their organization that says 98% of you aren't going to be around if this happens to you.
Mhm.
And just to tag on that, and I need what Antwayne has. I mean, that's why the partnership is so special, because we want to make sure, if Antwayne's the doctor, go get your physical before you get sick. Okay. and that's what you need to do. And so I think, when we talk about a prescription here, this is a product that we develop and we manufacture ourselves, and we've shipped over 5 million of these units around the world. Most of the Fortune companies use this device to protect their customers and their employees. As you said, Alicia, if you're sitting at home or you're sitting in the office or you're remote. And so, Antwayne, Enlightened, and ourselves with USBC put a partnership together and said, we're going to provide this to all the Black businesses out there to make sure they have what everybody else has. So if you look at this solution, it is your business continuity and backup device in one unit. It allows you to insert your storage, back it up. It can sit right next to your laptop. It can sit underneath your desk. It can sit wherever you need to have it. And by the way, it's ruggedized. So if you happen to drop it off your kitchen counter, or the kids run by and kick it off your desk, it's protected. I mean, give you a good example. HP, IBM, Dell, Hitachi, Lenovo, we all private label this with their brand on it. And they've actually done some interesting commercials. HP, I think, has some of the best. They've attached it to a roadster and ran it around the track for a couple 100 miles an hour. They've used it as a hockey puck in the ring, back in there, and actually has it working. And so what we've decided to do is to not only offer this we put a website together that you can use, that you can buy it directly from us instead of going through the normal channels. And by doing that, the discount levels are things that no one else can get, not even the large Fortune companies. And,
so I want to bring up to that point, I want to bring up the next slide to be able to show that site. And I do want, I want the two of you to be able to really talk about how special this relationship is, because I introduced both of you today as members of our President's Council with U.S. Black Chambers. Obviously, Antwayne, you have another role as a head of the Chamber of Greater Washington, the Black Chamber there. So I want you to be able to sort of, as working partners, as business owners, as leaders integral within the USBC network, would love for you to talk about what that partnership is. We have the website here for people to be able to get more information, and we'll continue to promote that as well. But speak a little bit to those hats that you're wearing, in addition to what you do as in terms of business owners yourself working together.
So I'll put on my vice chair of the U.S. Black Chambers, Inc., and I can tell you how special this is. Our responsibilities as a board, as a whole, is to all of the Black changes throughout the country. Over 300 Black-owned businesses that belong to this organization in one way or the other. This is an extremely special offer, because at the end of the day, we are getting better prices than the Fortune 500 companies are getting to be able to protect our own businesses. I don't think this has ever been done before, where you have technology that will allow ourselves to sustain ourselves, to be able to be protected, to be able to come back up within an hour on our businesses. And actually, the discount actually goes back to the USBC that allows us to provide additional services. And so not only are we offering this to our customers and to our businesses in Black-owned business throughout the country. But we're actually giving back, and I really appreciate the relationship we have with Eric, because it allows us to continue to looking at services, all the things that we're doing through this series, to be able to bring our chambers together, educate our chambers, to be able to advocate on the behalf of 300,000 businesses, over 300,000 businesses throughout the country on the Hill. And so this is a unique offer. I really appreciate it. He's a business partner, but also appreciate it from the U.S. Black Chamber's perspective, because we can do things for our businesses that's never been done before.
And yeah, I would just like to add to that. It's exciting to be able to have the ability to do it. It was something, as you know, Alicia, when she introduced me, I've been in the industry for over 30 plus years. I stopped counting after the plus. And so when, you know, we had the opportunity to put this together, not only, you know, were we excited because we actually can put our Black businesses in front of everybody else. We actually publicly announced this on February 11th. We took 50 Black leaders to New York. Ron was there front and center to ring the NASDAQ bell, and we announced this partnership in New York right after we rang the NASDAQ bell. So this is something that, you know, we're taking care of each other and supporting each other, and you know, we're going to win. So that's just want to say thanks again, Antwayne, Alicia. This is just so exciting to be part of your seminar, and I can't say enough, you know, in terms of what you're doing for all of us.
Well, I so appreciate both of you today. This offer, as you can see on this slide, it is a special offer for all of you who have joined us for this webinar. We will continue to send this out to you because we want you to be part of this. It is a great tool that's going to make you just much more secure than you ever thought, and kind of takes the worry out of some of the things that I know as I sit every day in front of my laptop that I think about. And so thank you both for your commitment, your dedication to Black businesses. So before we end, I have a couple of questions. We get a couple of questions in advance of all of our webinars, and I want to share them with you and get your thoughts on them. So let's go to full screen so we can see you completely, and as you answer these questions, and I think these are really interesting. So the first question that I have starts with, I served, so this is from an accounting professional. I served on the AICPA Committee on Professional Liability Insurance Program, and we had an extensive discussion around cybersecurity insurance. If I have cybersecurity insurance, could I call your firm to provide a solution to a breach? Second part of the question, do you recommend cybersecurity, and will that solve insurance, and will that solve any future problems that I may have? And what can I do to prevent or mitigate my risk of a cyber incident? So a lot to unpack there, but you can take them one at a time. Either one of you start.
So I'll start off. One of the things that we've been talking about, and this is a service offering that Enlightened sort of releases, is you really want to make sure that you do assessments of who you are in your cyber infrastructure. And here's why. Cyber insurance is expensive. It is expensive. However, it's necessary. And I'll answer your third question in a second. If you're able to go and say, listen, I've hired a company like Enlightened, or a company that provides these services, and they've checked my cybersecurity out, and basically I've passed all the critical tests the Department of Defense would use, my cyber insurance policy will be less. And the reason that's the case is because you're less of a risk. It's the same reason why when you get health insurance and you get a checkup, the healthier you are, the less your premiums are. Mm-hmm. I just had one the other day. I didn't increase my health insurance. And so my blood pressure was good, my weight was good, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, we can lower your premiums. And that was important because I was doing due diligence, because I was like, I can't pay this much. And at the end of the day, as a business owner, I have to have that level of insurance. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's critical that you have cyber insurance, because if you don't, and I'll turn it over to Eric after this, and you have a breach, you're going to get sued because you didn't do proper due diligence in your organizations. Many hospitals in the northeastern of the United States were getting broken into because the valuable information is your healthcare data.
Right.
Because if I get your healthcare data, I can make a decision not to hire you if I was a bad guy because you have a preconceived condition, and all of a sudden I don't want to hire you because of your blood pressure, your cholesterol, or these other diseases that you could have. And that information is being stolen and taken all the time. And basically, because these hospitals didn't protect themselves properly and didn't have cyber insurance, some of them went out of business.
Wow. Any thoughts, Eric?
Yeah, sure. And just to add on to what Antwayne was saying, he's absolutely right. You have to have some type of cyber insurance protection. And to his point, they're going to be looking at what have you done? You know, are you a high risk client or a high risk patient? And so if you said, I've done all the things here to make sure, you know, I've talked to Antwayne, I know exactly what I should be doing, and he's checked us out, that's the first checkbox. And then the second thing is to say, I now have implemented the best practices. Okay, I have 3 copies of my data. I have a solution that the Fortune 500 companies are using. First, they're going to be surprised, and 2, your premium will probably be a lot lower because you've done the basic homework. And to say I've had cybersecurity checking, what I'm doing, I have a solution that the Fortune companies are using, and you know, you can sleep at night because you know I can sleep at night. And I think that's really what, you know, to your question, Alicia, you know, that we should really be focused on doing.
And as an aside, is this in addition to any business or commercial liability insurance that you might have?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Great. The final question is starts this way. Recently, I spoke with a company offering laptop rental solutions to accompany a cloud package. How do you know what cloud packages make sense? And how do you avoid being held hostage to a vendor managing your data in the cloud if you decide to terminate a contract?
Well, you want me to go first on this?
Yeah, you can go first on this one, yeah.
I will unpack this one, and I will share with you some secrets out there in the world.
Okay, great.
Okay, first of all, I think you said you rented a laptop, right? Well, just so everybody's clear, when you return that laptop to them and you delete all of your information off of that hard drive, it is still there. It never goes away. So if someone tells you to do a delete function and now all your data is off that that hard drive, it is not gone. Okay, and if you look at the companies that know about that, Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, etc., they will either burn those hard drives or drill a hole in them because they know that that information is always there. The second thing from a cloud provider, so just take the largest cloud provider out there. Most of the small companies use Office 365. Okay, because they have their emails. Alicia answers. Here's another secret that you don't know. Okay, they only save your information for 30 days. That means if you go look for that email or that file and it's 31 days old, it is no longer there. So you have no protection with that information if you're looking for that email and it's not saved on another device.
Right.
Because you can just imagine if they're saving everyone's data, they probably have to have an entire city of data storage to keep all of those emails. So you have this built-in false security when you have, as Alicia raised her hand, I didn't know she was using Office 365.
No, you didn't.
But I know if you use it like I do, it's one of my best databases. Where did I get that information? Who sent that to me 66 months ago? All right, and it's probably stored on your laptop. But it's not inside of Microsoft Azure. So you only have one copy of that critical email that's sitting on your laptop, and that is it. And so, you know, a lot of them, obviously, you know, holding you hostage is because you have your data there and you don't have a backup copy. They can't hold you hostage if you follow the three rule, right? You know, you have a copy on your device, your laptop, a copy for business continuity, and a copy for backup. Okay, so you always need to keep a copy of your information. It's like anything else. You want to make sure you have a copy of your bank account. You want to make sure you have a copy of your insurance policy. You have to have a copy of your own data.
And I think that's so important, Eric, to your point, because a lot of things that we do now are subscription based. right? So if you stop your subscription,
It's gone.
it's gone, right? Absolutely. Antwayne, any last thoughts on that?
Yeah, for me, I tell folks all the time, I'm going to export information from these databases. Eric's right. At the end of the day, because I got caught once, you catch me one time, it's your fault. You give me twice, it's my fault.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm like, if I have my information in your cloud network, I'm going to export it and import it somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not going to because you're right, it's gone, and I'm not going to be a hostage. I hate that.
Right, absolutely. Well, we've come to the close of this great conversation. I want to thank you both for the time that you're taking with us today, the just the expertise that you've shared, the insight, the thought process too, to have us really sort of think through how we're approaching this. So thank you so much for this. So that's going to end this particular conversation of protecting your workspace and your data today. I want to remind everybody that our next webinar will be on tax and legal implications of the CARES Act. That will be next Thursday at 2 p.m. Please feel free again to send your questions in advance through our form on usblackchambers.org/cares-act /. And all of our webinars, just as this one will be available on demand, so you can access them at any time. And then finally, please visit usblackchambers.org for updated information on PPP, EIDL loans, and other COVID-19 issues. If you're not a member, please consider becoming one to continue to receive valuable information like you heard today from USBC. So until the next time, please enjoy your day and please stay safe.